Okay, everybody. We've been talking about glaciers in the last video, and I want to show you some pictures of glaciers, but I wanted to just take a minute to show you a few more pictures of some of the deposition erosional features we've been talking about, just for the purposes of review, and then we'll get back to glaciers. Here we can see a small stream, but we can see the outside of the curve very eroded, right? And on the inside of the curve, it's a gentle slope. We have deposition on this side. We have erosion on this side. Sometimes people call this side the cut bank. Sometimes people call this a point bar on the inside of that curve. Let's look at some more things. Here we have a river or a stream. The water is flowing down, but it's taking many different paths. The water doesn't have one clearly defined channel, and in this case we would call this type of stream a braided stream because the water takes many different paths as it flows downhill. This would be an example of a braided stream. Here we have a very big river. Here we have, I believe this is Mississippi, and we could see the eroded side over here. Over here would be where deposition is occurring. And because the water velocity is relatively low, we're moving fine sediment, silts and clays, maybe some sand. We can see some oxbow lakes in the background. And even though the water velocity is low, we're moving hundreds of tons of sediment just in the form of fine particles, our sand, silts, and clays. Larger particles, we need faster moving water. And sometimes it can be deceiving because we think, well, this slow moving water really can't move very much, but it can move tremendous amounts of sediment, just fine sediment. Here we can see an aerial photograph of another stream, lots of meanders. And again, we get lots of meanders when we have flat areas. So when the area is flat, like farm fields, we can see some farm fields up in the top of the picture, where we have farm fields where it's flat, and we have lots of meanders, or we have lots of meanders when it's flat. We can see oxbow lakes and the scars, the evidence of oxbow lakes. You know, again, those oxbow lakes fill in with sediment. We have ecological succession taking place. We have plants filling it in. Eventually, it'll become a field and forested. And we can see the evidence of old oxbows. Here's one here, kind of an unusual S shape, but the water certainly was there at one time. Here we have again another very meandering stream. And again, in order for a stream to meander this much, it has to be a relatively flat area. Here we can see the farm fields there. We can see some oxbows. Here's an oxbow up here. And we can see where oxbows are going to happen. Here we have the erosion outside of the curve. We have erosion on the outside of the curve here. Eventually those two sides of the stream will meet, form a new oxbow lake. Here's the scar of where an oxbow was, but has now been filled in, again, due to ecological succession. Here's a mountain stream. These streams in the mountains, because the slope is greater, the water velocity is higher. We could see the white water here, meaning rapids. The water is moving at a greater velocity. Because the water is moving faster, we have fewer meanders. Mountain streams tend to be younger and faster and straighter. They tend to have fewer bends and the ability to move bigger particles, even boulders, when the water velocity is high enough. They might not necessarily move as much material as, say, the Mississippi, but they can move bigger particles. And again, here we have rapids. When water is flowing quickly, we have the ability to move boulders. This is very typical of a mountain stream system. Here we have a meander. We can see some cows over there. Here's the eroded side, the cut bank, and then this is the inside of the curve where we have deposition. Again, same thing here. Here we have the eroded side over here. Here we have deposition on this side here. Again, eroded, deposited, cut bank, point bar. And this picture I put in because I thought it would be kind of interesting. Here we have erosion by wind. And here we have a desert environment. I believe this is Death Valley, California, or in that area. And we could see these rocks and piles of sand behind them. And this is very typical of erosion and weathering in a desert environment. The wind picks up those fine particles of sand. It'll sandblast those rocks smooth, and pile up the sand on the back sides of them, and eventually polish these rocks smooth. So this is very typical of wind erosion in a desert environment. And we talked about this structure in another video. Here we have what's called an alluvial fan. And again, alluvial fans form when it rains in the desert. And it might not rain very often, or it could be due to snowmelt. But in any case, we have water in the desert, and we have very little vegetation, or essentially no vegetation. So we don't have roots to hold the soil in place. And without roots, the soil just comes pouring out of the valleys and mountains and valleys, and it spills out into the valley floor down below. And we have a structure called an alluvial fan. And there's an alluvial fan there. Here's another alluvial fan. I think we saw this picture in one of the other videos, and they even built a road around the outside of it. But the sediment, all unsorted, comes pouring out of the mountains, out of the valleys, spills out into the valley floor below. Something else I didn't notice the last time we looked at this picture is this white stuff here. It kind of looks like snow. It's actually salt. This is huge deposits of salt. Again, arid environments, we have a lot of evaporation taking place, and we have salt deposits, large salt deposits. Something you would never see in this area. Too humid, too much rain. All right, let's actually stop here. We'll just call this a quick little review of some of the erosional depositional features we looked at, and then I'll just make a separate video on glaciers. I spent a little more time on that than I thought I would. So let's stop here. We'll make another video on